Hi, this is an example of Client Track. The goal is to spend about 15 minutes here and go through the program to show you how easy it is to schedule the tasks, to notify your clients of their upcoming tasks, and for each individual staff member to be able to identify exactly what their workload is and the process control within the office. So what we've done is we've divided your clients into two different groups, your business clients and your personal T1 clients, your personal tax clients. We know that many of your T1 clients are going to be owners and operators of your businesses, and so we allow you to match up those people. And you can have lots of situations where you have an individual, and that individual might be the owner and operator of several different companies. You can also link that person with multiple entities. So if you change the telephone number for any one of them, ClientTrack will automatically change the telephone number for all the others as well. So let's start with the business client section. So the business client section is a section where your clients are going to be the corporations, your sole proprietorships, your nonprofits, your estates and trusts, and that sort of thing. So right on the main screen here, we have Sample Beauty Salon, and we can navigate from one client to the next. So all your clients are in here. And certainly you can search for your clients. So if you go find client, you'd be able to find a client, for example, by the client name, and you can go directly to the clients. You can also search the clients by any identifying information. So any information that's in client track is searchable. So an address, a telephone number, a business number, a corporate tax number, anything like that would be searchable, and you can find the clients based on that information. So if we look at the main screen here, we're on one particular client, the Sample Beauty Salon, and you can see that you've got all of the identifying information about it right on the screen. So you don't have to look that up in a secondary window. All the telephone number, the address, the banking information, all of that's right on the main screen. Over here on the right hand side, you've got information on the people who work for this particular company. So in this case, Sarah Stylus is the default contact for the Sample Beauty Salon, and you can see Sarah's information directly right on this screen. The next section that we have here is a client services provided. So this is the information specifically for the what services you do for this particular client. And that's important because you're going to be doing a lot of different services for a lot of different clients. And the client services provided section allows you to identify exactly what services you do for this particular client. So you can indicate that you do the GST, the PST, the payroll, the bookkeeping, the T4s, that kind of thing. So the next step in terms of setting up and configuring client track is to schedule the actual task for a client. So in this example, to clear out the HST, so in this example we have the HST, and we're scheduling the HST specific task for this one client, the Sample Beauty Salon. So right now there's no task scheduled. All we have to do is click the payment frequency here on the left hand side. And this is the advantage that ClientTrack has because all of the dates are built right into ClientTrack from a federal and provincial point of view. So if they have a filing period of quarterly, I can just click quarterly. ClientTrack is smart enough to realize that this is a corporation, and if we click the year end is set to January 31st. So I can just click quarterly, and I've now got my 4 quarterly dates, and I can set those up. Okay, so it automatically determined that the first quarter should be due in May based on a January year-end fiscal, and it has scheduled each of the other quarters sequentially after that. The first task due February 28th is actually the last quarter for the previous fiscal, but the tasks are put in date order in the order that you have to do them in terms of the calendar so that you can see the tasks. The other information on here allows you to identify which employee is going to work on this task, and it's very easy to drop this down and select different employees to schedule for this. The closed checkbox represents that the task is done, and you want to check that checkbox to indicate the task is completely done. Now we have a process control, a project management that allows you to identify other steps that need to be completed before it gets closed in terms of identifying when the clients brought their information in and that sort of thing. The next checkbox is the notify checkmark. And this is actually a really neat feature. So this is the feature where you can automatically send an email to the client to remind the client several days prior to the task coming due that they need to bring their information in. So if I click the notify checkmark, for example, this task that I click notify for is ultimately due to Revenue Canada on February 28th. The period ends for this particular task on January 31st. What I want to do is I want to send an email to the client so that the client gets an email so we can get the paperwork in on time. The email is scheduled to go out to the client on February 10th. And I chose February 10th because February 10th is 15 business days prior to the due date of the task being due. Now, ClientTrack uses 15 in this case simply because that's what has been configured in the system. But you have the flexibility to choose what you would like in terms of the period that you want the client to be notified. So you can indicate that for payroll type items that you might want the client notified 3 days prior to each of the payroll deadlines. For things like monthly and quarterly GST, HST, you may want to notify the client 30 days prior. So you can configure that. The next step in terms of the notification is you can identify what type of notification you want to send to the client. So if I choose email, I can quickly have an email generated for me in terms of a template, and this template is completely customizable, so you can personalize this template with your own company information. But in this case, it says, Dear Sarah Stylist, your GST is due on Friday, February 28th. Please arrange to drop off the paperwork and allow us to complete the return. You can call our office if you need any questions or have any assistance. So it automatically creates all of this, and it'll put the client's email address in had it been entered into the system. In this case, because it's a sample client, we don't have an email entered, so in this case it happens to be blank. So by doing that, I've set up a really neat way that I can send an email to the client to notify the client with lots of headway that their task is coming due so that you get the opportunity to get the information brought in on time. If I want to notify the client of one of these, typically I want to notify the client of all of these. So I go auto notify all above, and we're going to go finish. And I've now set up very quickly an automatic email for each of these 4 different tasks. Okay, so that's what ClientTrack is trying to accomplish in terms of saving you a lot of time and effort, but also dealing with the fact that you have to chase your clients, you have to get the information in. So in terms of the chasing process, the next step that has to happen is the client needs to give you the information, and you can record that. So if I click the information icon for any task, what I can do is I can see more information about that particular task. So I can see that this is the fourth quarter GST return. It's due on February 28th. We have an in-house due date. So the in-house due date is the ability for you to have a due date that your staff have to meet in terms of completing this that's actually a few days prior to the real due date when Revenue Canada wants this task done. And this is really important because you often, as accounting professionals, need to get the task done before the task actually comes due so that the client has enough time to get that remittance, make the payment to the bank, and make sure that payment gets to the government on the due date. So we have some flag information, so you can flag items as a priority. You can identify which task has missing information, which tasks have a problem. You can add any notes to any particular task so that any other staff member can see these notes and they can add their own notes as well. And then we have a process control. Okay, and this is part of the philosophy of ClientTrack is we're trying to treat each of your deadlines that you have to meet like a process, like a project. You're trying to identify the different steps and stages that the tasks do. And one of the first steps that you want to set up is to indicate when the client brought their information in so that you can identify all of those tasks. So we've sort of set up as an example, 2 steps, so received and processed. So you'll be able to indicate when you receive the information, when the processing of that particular deadline has been completed as an internal accounting job, and then ultimately we're going to use a close check mark to indicate when the task is closed. So as a best practice, when that information comes in the front door and whoever receives the information, they can just click the receive check mark to say that it's received, and we have some custom fields here. So under file location, which I've named as a custom field, I can indicate where the file was actually put. So I indicated the file was placed in filing cabinet 23, and I can go OK. So with that one step, I've now one person has been able to identify to the whole office that this paperwork has been received, where it has been received, and they can add any notes that would be relevant to that particular job. And that's important because then you have one system and everybody can see that information. So the next step is to schedule the rest of the tasks for this particular client. So if I go to payroll source deduction, you can see that I've got the T4, the T4A, the T5 scheduled, and I've also got monthly payroll remit. So you can see that I've got the payroll source deductions due on the 15th, starting January 15th, for all the months for this whole calendar year. And I've got a T4, T4A, and I have a T5 scheduled for next year for February 28, 2015. Okay, the other tabs are very similar, so I can schedule the payroll. So you can see that I have a bi-weekly payroll scheduled. So starting May 16th, and I've scheduled them every 2 weeks until the end of the calendar year. So the idea is that everything's scheduled, I can see exactly what's due, and I'm not going to miss anything. Now, in terms of the screen that I'm in now, these particular tabs are generally used for setting up your clients. You wouldn't generally be cycling through all these tabs for each of your clients in order to determine what your actual workload is. On a day-to-day basis, when you and your staff come into Client Track, you are going to be going to your view tasks. So your view tasks is really the view that gives you the to-do list of what you need to do. So by default, this is showing you all uncompleted tasks for June 1st to June 30th. And you can have a lot of flexibility to configure this task list to show lots of different things. So you can see that I've set it up to show the client name. I can see what the task is. I can see the in-house due date for that task. I can see when the actual due date for the task is. I can sort by all kinds of different things, just like you would say in an Excel spreadsheet. I can see which employee is assigned to the task, and then here's my process control. So I have a series of a process where I'd be able to identify have we received the information processed. I can add other steps if I want to, and ultimately we're trying to close the task. So if I click the receive check mark, I can see exactly who checked that received checkmark and on what date that received checkmark was checked. Okay, so as different people complete their different parts, each person would then check the checkmark. Now this particular task list is quite flexible in terms of being able to show me the task based on what I'm interested in. So this is all uncompleted tasks for June 1st to June 30th. Let's pretend that I want to do an advanced search, and I can search by all kinds of different information. So for example, I can search by a particular client and narrow the tasks in this list to only tasks assigned to a particular client. I can search by a particular task type. So if it's my job to work on, for example, the HST, I can say, okay, narrow down this task list to only HST type tasks that are specifically assigned to David Merritt as an employee. I can also narrow this down to supervising partner and managing accountant. So these two fields allow me to identify the ownership. When you set up your clients, each of the clients can be allocated to a specific supervising partner or managing accountant in terms of an ownership. So let's say, for example, you have two partners within a particular office location. You'd be able to identify which clients are allocated to each of those two partners, and then you would be able to sub-identify below that which clients are allocated to various managing accountants within the office, and you can do a search for this. So a partner can come in here and say, okay, show me all tasks assigned only to the clients that I'm assigned to the clients, and they would be able to see that list, and that's a very convenient type feature. So for example, if I'm going to remove the search for HST and I'm going to say, okay, just show me all tasks assigned to David, and I'm going to go perform search. So what it's now done is it's narrowed down the list to tasks assigned to David, still within the month of June 1st to June 30th. Okay, and I can see all the tasks assigned to that one particular employee. I can go a step further. So what I can do is I can say, okay, I want to see a task assigned to me, but only where we've actually received the information. I'm not interested, for example, in tasks where we have not yet received the information. So I'm going to go back to advanced search, and I'm going to say search for status where received is checked, and go perform search. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to see all the tasks only where they've been assigned to David and where the information's been received. And this is very, very powerful because now that staff member had the ability to identify tasks that are available for them to work on right now. And that's quite a time saving, so that that employee didn't have to spend time running around the office or asking other people to determine which tasks were available for them to work on now and which tasks are still waiting for the clients to get back on them. So I can see very quickly, okay, show me all tasks for this month. So let's say, for example, that I'm working on this task here, and I realize the client has not brought their stuff in, and I want to notify the client right away that they need to bring their stuff in. So I can actually use this Notify Now feature, and I can actually send an email right now to the client, and I can modify the template, but I can send an email now to remind the client to bring their stuff in. So it gives me a very easy way to send an email to the client as a reminder for them to bring all their stuff in. Okay, so there's a lot of neat features with the program as well. Another feature that I'm going to show you is you can track all the missing information in addition to seeing like whether the clients brought their information in. Because often what will happen is you can record that the clients brought their stuff in, and that's all well and good, but 2 weeks later you go to open your file and you realize the client has forgot some stuff. So if I want to, for example, indicate that I'm working on the biweekly employee payroll, the information's been received, but the client has forgot some information, and I didn't realize that until I went to go work on the file after they brought their information in. So I can actually click right on the client's name, and if I go to more info, I have the ability under more info here. You can see that I can record very specific things that I need from this particular client. And anybody in your office has the ability to do that. So you can see that different staff members have recorded that they need, for example, in this case, the MasterCard statements for May. They need the MasterCard statement for January, a Visa statement. So it allows any one person within your office to be able to quickly indicate exactly what they need, and because it's in a list, anybody else can pick up the phone and talk to the client and have all the information at their fingertips in order to communicate with that particular client. So to give you an example of how this works, if I go add new missing information, I can really easily add a document that I need the client to bring in. And I can add this as soon as I realize that in terms of working on their file. So I can say, let's say that we need T5 dividend information. Okay, and it's recorded by me, so it records which staff member recorded this particular missing item. It allocates the missing item to the sample beauty salon, which is the client we had focus on. And I was able to, for example, do a date stamp, so it puts today's date and time in. And I'm going to put enough information about this missing item that I know that anyone else in my office can receive a call from the client and have a full conversation with the client without having to find the file, interrupt any colleagues, or waste any time looking up any additional information. So I'm going to say T5 dividends for X investment. So this is obviously wouldn't be a very real description. You would want to indicate what the investment is for what time period and so on and so forth. The moment I enter this particular missing item, I have the ability to send an email to the client right now to let them know that I'm missing this particular item. So I can say send notification to client, and I can go finish. And if I do it again, it opens up my default email program. So we'll just give it a second to think. So this is an Outlook email, and so this is the T5 dividends that I have specifically added. Because this is an Outlook email, I have the ability to edit this. But what ClientTrack has done is in this email, it has also listed all of the other things that we need from this client that the client still hasn't brought in. Okay, and then I can just send off that email. And because the email has been sent, ClientTrack has recorded the client has been notified of this particular missing information on what date and by who. So I would then be able to see all the missing items that different people have recorded. So it's all in one spot. It's very easy to see, and it gives all of your staff members the ability to talk to the client, to chase the client, and to have all their information at their fingertips. I can see, for example, if I click the Open Advanced Missing Info form, all of the missing items that are currently required for all clients for the whole office. And this includes the T2s, the businesses, and the personal task clients. So with this one list here, this is a list of everything that we're waiting on in terms of the client to bring in for missing information or outstanding questions. I can see who the client is. I can see what it is we're waiting for. I can see have we notified the client? Are they aware that they need to bring that in? And then have we received the answer? Has that answer been entered? And ultimately we're trying to resolve each of the missing items. So once the missing information comes in, you can click the resolve check mark, and that tells ClientTrack that it's been done and it's no longer an outstanding item. So these are the kind of tools that we give you in order to be able to really effectively control the fact that you need to chase your clients, you need to get paperwork, you need to record paperwork so that you can smoothly put your tasks from one end of the office to the other and get all the deadlines met as quickly and efficiently as possible. Another feature that we have is we have the ability for you to record all of what we call the communications for the client. So these would be telephone calls, they might be email exchanges, they might be text messages, in-person meetings that you've had. So as each staff member has interactions with the client, they record those interactions, and so that everybody else can see what was said to the client, all what issues there were, and everything's recorded for legal and posterity purposes in terms of the different conversations that have been had with the client. If we go back to the view task section, I'll show you the task calendar section. So the task calendar allows each staff member to see how many tasks and what their current workload is. So if I go, for example, to the week view, I can see the calendar for David. So this is one of the internal staff members, and I would be able to see the calendar for any particular staff member. So the goal here is that we attach a time value to the task. It's an estimated budget on how long that particular task is going to take. And it allows the employees to move these tasks around on the calendar so that they can budget for the fact that they have an 8-hour working day and they have all these tasks that they need to do, and they want to make sure that they have enough time to complete all the tasks that have been assigned to them. This is also very good for managers who want to be able to come in here and be able to identify that people have an appropriate workload. Do they have too much work, too little work, and reallocate resources among the different staff to make sure that everybody has a fair workload. It's very easy to use this. It's all drag and drop. So I can take this task and I can drag and drop it to any other day, and I can do that kind of thing. So I can also see things in, for example, month view. So I can see, for example, for each working day, how many tasks are scheduled on that day. and I would be able to reallocate the resources. So as an example, I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to show you the calendar for none assigned. So these are actually all the tasks that have not yet been assigned to individual staff. So ideally, we would want this calendar to be empty, but you can see that there's still a lot of tasks that have not been allocated. So I can easily, for example, drag and drop. If I want this task to be done, for example, on the 11th, I can just do that. I can also reallocate tasks, so I can go send tasks to the user, and I can say, okay, I want David to work on this task, and I want Jane to work on this task. So it gives you a very easy way to take all the tasks and view the tasks as the time value, so that you can identify that everybody's got a decent workload, and that all the tasks are going to be done. And you also want to make sure that as the clients bring stuff in at the last minute, that you're not pushing too much work towards the end of the month, thus making it so that you have working days well beyond 8 hours in terms of trying to get everything completed at the end of the month. All right, so that's effectively client track in a nutshell from the task and the process management point of view. The next thing I'm going to show you is what we call the projects. So up to now, basically, I've just been talking about things in terms of your basic tasks, your GST, your bookkeeping, that sort of thing. But of course, T2s and year ends are going to be a big part of most accounting professionals. Um, for those types of tasks, what you want is you want sort of a project management control system where you can identify the different steps of the projects and you can see who's working on it. So if we go to the project section here, you can see that this is a list of different projects that I have running for the clients. In this case, we have 3 clients where we have a notice to reader project that's currently ongoing. We have another 3 clients here that have implemented a project that we call Project A. So the concept here is for each type of project, whether it might be an audit, a notice to reader, a consulting project, you need to set up the project to tell ClientTrack how many steps you would like in that particular project. So in this case here, we have an audit project that we've already set up, and this audit project has been configured to have 8 steps within the project and is currently assigned to 2 clients. The same thing for new project A. This new project has 7 steps and is currently assigned to 3 clients. Our notice to reader has 6 steps and is assigned to 3 clients. So each type of project is going to have a different number of steps depending on how many steps you want to complete the project. So I'll show you as an example. If we go new template project, you can create a new project and you can identify exactly how that project's going to look in terms of how many steps it is, what the steps are going to be called, and who's going to work on them. So I can call this, for example, engagement. Okay, and I can add several steps. So I can say, let's say we need a meeting with a client. Let me say processing, review, and finalize. Okay, so, and I can specifically specify by default which employee might specifically do this step. Now, when I assign this project to a client, I have flexibility to change who the person who is going to be assigned to each particular step. But in this particular case, I can identify who the default person is going to be, and then I can just change the allocation of who's been working on this particular steps as we go, kind of thing. I won't get into a lot of the details, but you have the ability to do budgeting with the projects to indicate how much time and how much cost each of these steps should take, so that you could make sure that all your projects can be completed in a reasonable time and budget point of view. So we're going to go OK. So I now have this engagement project, and I can select which clients that I want to allocate to that particular project. Okay, so you can see at the bottom here we have our ABC company and David Merritt company that are running the engagement project. If I want to see all the steps within that project, I can actually see each of the steps. So I'd be able to see, okay, we had a meeting, the processing, so on and so forth. And once again, if I click just outside, I can see which employee was assigned to it, and I can see which employee completed the task, whether that was the same employee or not. I can add notes for that particular step. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of that kind of thing. So we can easily see which employees are assigned to which steps, and everybody can see exactly what's on the calendar in terms of different projects, different tasks, and that sort of thing. To give you an example of how this would work, if we go to the personal client section and we go view list, this is another project management section we have. So you can see all of your T1 clients, and you would be able to see all kinds of information in terms of exactly what step you're doing, who's completed the steps, what steps have been completed, and so on and so forth. Okay, so for example, in this case here, I've got Bart Simpson, and the overall year end's set to awaiting client. I can say, okay, they just brought their information, so this T1 is now in progress. We can identify that we've now received all the information, and it's received on June 20th, and we want to try and complete this return, for example, by June 30th as an example. Okay, and we can see the number of days that this return has been in progress from the point of view that you received the information to today. And then once we complete this, we lock the turnaround time within this. So you'll be able to see exactly how many days it took you from the day you completed it to the day, from the day that you received the information to the day that you completed it. And you would be able to see, for example, which employee is assigned to complete this T1 and who the managing accountant supervising partner is for each of the returns and exactly what the status is. So it gives you very, very nice process control so that you can see exactly what's going on, which returns are on hold, which ones are in progress, so on and so forth. Okay, I'm going to wrap up the presentation at this point, and I'll follow up with another one that will talk about the time and billing and the invoicing as well. Okay, thank you very much for your time.